Hey guys, Nicole here with Obscure Reptiles and Caging, and today we're going to be explaining how exactly to breed rats for feeders. So let's get started. Hey guys, so today we're going to be breaking down exactly how to breed rats. There's actually a couple different techniques. We're going to talk about different types of substrates that you can use, some tips to help with odor control. We're also going to talk about is it actually worth it for breeding rodents if you have reptiles. Alright, so to get started, you have to decide, do you really want to breed rats? Number one is, are you allergic? A lot of people are actually allergic and don't even know that they are. How many rats do you need? So for example, if you have less than 5 snakes, it's probably not going to be worth it for you to breed rats, only because of how much upkeep it's going to take and everything we're going to get into here shortly. But if you have more than 5, then I would say it's probably going to be worth it for you. If you have less than 5, an alternative would be finding a local breeder that breeds their own rodents and see if you can get, again, if it's between 1 and 5 per week, you could probably find somebody who has prices that are not only probably a little bit cheaper or a lot cheaper than a pet store, but they're probably a lot better quality as well. One of the first things, let's say you've decided I definitely am going to breed these rats, the first thing you're going to need to think about is getting yourself or making yourself or finding out how to build a CO2 chamber. And the reason why you want to do that is because that is the most humane way, other than a few other ways. It's one of the most humane ways, and that's an easy way to be able to euthanize quite a few at one time. So let's say you have 5 snakes, but you have a ton of extra larges, and all your snakes eat smalls. Now you can humanely euthanize all those extra larges, so you can keep the smalls for yourself, and then either keep the larges for when you need them, or you can then also sell them. No matter where you put these guys, they are going to have an odor. They are rats, especially if you're going to be keeping a ton of these guys. Normally, here is a picture of a rodent rack. The reason why these work so well is because it is a mortar mixing tub, which is the black part. It slides in and out. It's a pretty thick plastic, so they can't chew through it very well, but they can sometimes, so you have to maintain that. And number 2 is you can put the food up on the actual metal screen. That way when they go to the bathroom, they're not ruining and soiling and wasting a bunch of food. And on top of that, you can add a water system, so they constantly have a flow of water to their actual rack. So that is a very good way, as long as you are cleaning it often enough. They always have access to food and water. That is a very good way, as long as you are not overfilling those bins. You can also put them in, let's say, big ass cages. Those are a lot harder to clean, maintain, and you have to remember that the little pinkies can actually get out if you don't have a way to maintain them, keeping them in when they're very small, depending on how close together those bars are. So to actually breed rats, there are a couple different techniques. The one that I have always seen best results with personally is you put 2 to 3 females per enclosure and 1 male. That way they generally have all their babies around the same time. They all kind of get on the same cycle, and the male breeds all of the females. They have their babies. The male is used to that female. They're not aggressive. I very rarely have ever seen males aggressive to their own babies. And that way they just continue to breed, and it's kind of the lazy way to do it because you don't have to worry about who's going where. They're already in an already organized little colony. The other option is you have 2 to 3 females and you only have 1 male per rack. And every 5 days, 4 days, 7 days, you cycle him from one enclosure to the next. The reason why I don't like that is having to remember where he was last. You have to have a good system, and if for some reason he doesn't impregnate one of the females, he goes to the next enclosure, he's not going to see that same female for 5 or 6 weeks. So she'll just be sitting there not really doing very much. To me, specifically, it's a little bit more of a hassle. But you are keeping more rodents now, and males generally, because of the testosterone, have more of an odor when it comes to rats or mice. And they're a bit bigger. They can be a little bit more with an attitude depending on the male. By cycling him through and keep moving him from one bin to the next, can also get very good results as well with less rats that you're actually taking care of and feeding. But you have to be very on top of where he was last, when he has to move, and all that type of stuff. Now when it comes to breeding rodents, there are a few very important things. Number 1 is you need a really good bedding source. Let's say you've already picked what type of cage you want to do. I would very much not recommend putting in glass tanks, as urine odor sinks down low, traps all the smell in there, and then you can get a lot of rats with respiratory infections. These rats most of their brain is dedicated to the sense of smell. So them having to smell urine all the time is not good for them, and you're going to get respiratory infections. So something I would recommend is getting a very good bedding, and depending on your bedding will depend on how often you have to clean. Do not use cedar. That is not good, again, for their lungs. Rats are very sensitive when it comes to smell. We don't want to use cedar bedding. Most people use something like this from Tractor Supply. To keep odor down, I would recommend cleaning every 5 to 7 days, and if you're keeping them somewhere that's quite warm, you want to do it even more often. If these rats are getting too hot or too cold, they are not going to breed for you. You can have them surviving at 50 to 55 degrees, but they're really not going to want to breed unless they're around 65. And if it's above 80, 85, again, they're not going to want to do anything for you. So you kind of have to keep them in the perfect climate to be able to want to reproduce, or they will reproduce a lot less. Another big thing, other than keeping them really clean, is you want to give them a good source of food. You do not want to be giving them cheap dry dog food. There are tons of different rat specific blends out there. A lot of people use, there's Oxbow, Missouri, there is Cambach. We'll put the bag right here because I have no idea how to say it. I've never said it other than reading it before. There's tons of different brands out there for specifically for rats. It's also very good for them to have fresh vegetables and enrichment. So even if you have toilet paper rolls, don't throw them out, throw them in their enclosure. Sometimes they like to put babies in there. If you've got extra wrapping paper after Christmas, give it to them so they can play with. Yes, they're just feeders, but you want them to they're still animals. They're very intelligent animals at that, so you want them to be able to have a well-balanced life, even though they are just for feeders. One of the best beddings you can actually use is called Carefree or Carefresh. There's a couple different brands, something like this. The recycled bedding, it has no dust, and it holds the urine smell a lot better than almost all beddings, but it is quite expensive. But if you only have a very small group, you're only breeding, let's say you've got 3 girls and a boy and you can afford it, that's a really good way, and it's a very good option. Another trick I'm going to let you guys in on is this right here. This is Sweet PDZ. It is a urine control. It's made for horses, and it's just a powder, almost looks like a white sand, and you put that at the bottom of your enclosure before you put the bedding on top, and it helps control that urine smell. You will thank me in the long run, so I highly recommend getting a bag of that as well. You could get it at Tractor Supply or a few other places. Now, if you are breeding rats, make sure again that they have access to fresh food and water. You can do water bottles, but keep in mind, if they're plastic, they can chew through them and they can clog up. One of the best options out there are watering systems. See if I can find a photo of one for you, but they will flood from time to time. The little nipple that they actually will push on to get the water out will jam up. Something will get stuck in the system, and there's no water coming out at all. So you have to maintain these animals and check on them often. If there's a flood and all the water goes into one bin, then you're going to lose all the rats in that bin, unfortunately, especially if it's cold out or if you're only checking them once a week. So make sure you are paying attention, if you have a watering system, to how much water, if water's coming out of each of those nipples. Normally when cleaning enclosures, you're going to want to check each of them as you're cleaning to make sure that they are functioning properly. When you are breeding these rats, it is also very much recommended to breed your females in pairs at a minimum. And the reason is because even if you only have 2 females and a male, a lot of the times the females, if they're not pregnant at exactly the same time, they will have litters very close to each other. And some moms are just not very good moms. Some moms will steal all the babies and they're wonderful moms. But if you have 2 moms who give birth around the same time, they will mix, match, and share their babies. And they tend to take care of each other's babies even better than they take care of their own. And you can have bigger litters thrive because you have 2 moms taking care of them rather than just one. Maybe one's not lactating very well, one gets sick. If you have 2 moms at the same time, at least 2 females per enclosure, they tend to help each other. Plus, they're never alone. Especially if you're doing that cycling thing where the male's going from one cage to another. Always would have at least 2 females. That way they can help each other raise the babies and they're not so lonely. Make sure that you have a male, make sure you have 2 females, and just give them some time. When you are actually breeding and you've got a litter of babies, make sure by 4.5 to 5 weeks old, if you have a litter, you are taking those males out, because those males are old enough to breed back to their mom and breed to their sisters, because some female rats have very young cycles starting. So make sure that you know exactly how old they are so you can separate them out in time. But breeding rats It's pretty stinky, it's pretty gross sometimes, but it is very worth it, especially if you have a large collection of reptiles and no one to rely on for breeding. And even if you have someone to rely on for breeding, if they decide that they don't want to breed anymore, now it's on you to be able to do it. So it's always good to be self-sufficient when possible. Alright guys, that's it for this video. If you have any questions, you can put them in the comments below. If you haven't already, please subscribe. We do new videos every single week. So I'll see you guys in the next video.